Good to go.
Good evening, snooker fans. Welcome to episode 30 of the 15 Red podcast. I'm here in Northern Ireland in County Tyrone with Mike is joining me from Vancouver. Good morning, Mike.
Morning, Scott. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well. A very exciting and packed programme. We two things to explain. Graham is not with us, I believe, because it's his birthday tomorrow. So we've given him the day off for that, but you'll forgive us for that.
Yeah.
And we have to apologise, or not apologise, but say sorry for the quality of yesterday's interview with Marcus Stead, because Graham's phone was going through an update and therefore his Wi-Fi was a bit off. So
that's okay. We can get Marcus on again, I'm sure. And
yes.
So excellent content from him yesterday.
Yes, and we got quite a bit to go over from that Marcus Stead interview. But first of all, Mike, you're going to update us with several news items. But firstly, with the Pro Series, Group 3 of Stage 2 is being played today, I believe.
You are correct. Right now, currently, as it stands, Jack Lisowski and Barry Hawkins are the top two seeds in the Group 3. And they've got 2 more matches left each. So it looks like an almost certainty that Hawkins and Lisowski are going to go through.
To the final group, which will all be played on Sunday.
Correct. Yep. And so there's only, it looks like Hawkins versus Lee Hong Ho, and Lisowski plays Mark Davis, and Jack Lisowski plays Sam Craigie, and Barry Hawkins plays Joe Perry. So if they win one of those 2 matches each, they would advance.
Yes. And just remind us who's in the final group.
Who's in the final group?
Yes, who's in the final group as it stands?
As it stands right now, I see Ali Carter, Mark Williams,
yes,
Kyron Wilson, Zhao Gudong. And then there's 4 more slots that are going to be filled up with Group 3 and Group 4.
Yeah.
So not too bad.
No, not too bad a field for a first tournament.
No.
First time the tournament's been stayed. Of course, we're really looking forward to the Tour Championship next week.
Yep.
Best of 19 the whole way through.
Yep.
Of course. And there are... We look forward to proper snooker returning to our screens again.
Yes, it's a good tournament to have right before the World Championships. Best
Indeed.
all the way through.
Indeed. And then I've got a news update from Kelly Barker,
yes,
who I added on Facebook this morning and is now or has pledged to be a regular listener after discovering our interview with Dave Hendon. I was speaking to her yesterday, and by the way, her partner, Chris Downer, will be familiar to snooker fans as the compiler of the Crucible Almanac.
Oh, okay. Very good.
And you can order those. Those will be readily available shortly because he will have collected them from the printers today, I believe, on his lunch break. So we await those with bated breath. But Kelly is a regular. She's been to Crucible every year since 1998. And she was telling me in our conversation about half an hour ago that the ticket holders, those that bought tickets in advance, have been contacted by the World Snooker Tour, the WST, regarding their Crucible arrangements. And the only thing they have to do, there'll be about 300 of a crowd, hopefully, and they will all have to have a negative COVID test before going in. But apart from that, there's nothing else, and probably masks when they go in, but we're all used to that at this stage.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, no. So tentatively, she's gonna come on next Friday, I believe. Is that
Yes, next Friday, God willing, if I can arrange it with her.
perfect? That sounds
And
good.
hopefully by that time I will have a copy of the almanac.
Well, speaking of copies, I picked up the copy of Black Farce and Cue Ball Wizards this morning.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to reading through that, and I'm thinking maybe the beginning of April, yourself and I will do a book review and a full episode of that book written by Clive Everton, and just a Clive Everton episode.
Yes.
I think it is quite necessary to have a full episode dedicated to him and he's what he's done and what he's meant to snooker.
Over a period of nearly 60 years.
Yeah, exactly. So I think a 1 hour episode is more than warranted.
Yes, indeed. And of course, best wishes to Clive. We know he's not in the best of health presently, so good wishes, and we hope that he returns to full health in good order.
Well, yeah, well said. I think that's very good, and hopefully he's getting back in full song here.
Indeed. Shall we move on to our countdown of matches? Just before we move on to the Marcus Steed things, I'll just briefly mention the countdown of matches.
Yeah, let's go through that first. I think that's a good spot. Let's talk about your match. Who did you pick again?
I picked Roddy O'Sullivan against Mark Allen from 2009.
Oh, the second round match.
Yes.
Okay.
Which Mark Allen won 13-11.
Okay.
Before anybody accuses me of local bias, I'm not ashamed of it. But no, Mark Allen did play well. It was the only year he's really done anything at Sheffield.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, well, it's been said maybe he isn't a Crucible player, but he did show up on that match. I will say he was.
Yeah, and the standard was superb. I don't know whether you had the chance to watch it yet, Mike.
But I have. I've seen it before, and it is, yes, the standard is very, very high. Lots of big breaks. Yeah, it was a very, very good match. Very entertaining match.
Yeah, so definitely won. That's match number 26. And whose turn is it tomorrow?
I believe Graham's tomorrow. That's his post.
Yes.
So we'll let him know if he's not laying on the floor drunk or something. We'll make sure he's got his match posted.
Otherwise, you or I can chip in if necessary.
No, I'm sure we can do that as well. So
moving on then to the Marcus Stead conversation from yesterday, that was very illuminating.
Yeah, it was. Yes, it was very illuminating. I got a phone call. Okay, there we go. The answer machine's got it. Yeah. So yes, it was a very, very good conversation. I found it very informative. We learned of many different things, you know, about Clive, obviously, and the history of snooker and stuff. So I thought it was very informative. What did you find? What was the most interesting point that you found yesterday? What was your takeaway, I should say? What is your takeaway?
Well, I suppose apart from all that Clive stuff, which we will cover in a future episode,
yep.
I think the most interesting thing for me was the amount of amateur players that he would have written about in Snooker Scene, you know, Clive's magazine, that he writes for. He does a lot of writing for the amateur scene. And, you know, he's written about a lot of, like, British amateurs, and he notes how many of them actually failed to make it in the pro ranks.
Yeah. Yes. It kind of goes along with what we've been saying here pretty much for the last month, like how difficult it is to do anything. It's very good at the top and it's okay in the middle, but it's just like ridiculously difficult from the grassroots level just to get into it.
Yeah.
It's a daunting task. It looks like.
I mean, it wouldn't be fair to name names, of course, but I think we know the sort of players he was talking about.
What I found interesting was when he turned around and said that he believes that Gareth Allen made the right decision to walk away from the game. I found that very, very telling. He was only 32. He's only 32, right?
Yeah.
And he said that he made the right decision.
Yeah.
Now, that's not exactly inspiring for people that want to get into the game and maybe take it on a serious level. You know, that's saying something. So another thing that I found interesting was when I asked him about the media coverage of snooker.
Yes.
So as a whole, what do you think of the media coverage?
Well, if you include ITV4 and Eurosport, and
I cover it all. I ask you to cover the whole thing.
well, you know, snooker coverage in general, like everything, has never been better.
Really?
Hold on, I'm not finished yet. With one exception, the BBC.
Okay, but the way it sounded yesterday, it sounded like it was getting very minimal coverage. It was bare bones. It was like one reporter, like, and he, to be fair, he did say all of media was cut down to like bare bones minimum.
Oh, you mean newspapers and so on? Yes.
When I say media, I'm talking about everything. That's why I'm a little bit surprised. I was surprised when I heard that from him, but then you think about it is an uphill battle. It seems like.
Yeah, because I suppose, and I'm not being rude to you here, mate, but given you've not been in this country since 1988,
yeah,
you know, when you would have left,
yeah,
things were perfectly healthy in terms of snooker
correct.
coverage in the national press.
Correct.
But obviously, since, you know, it's gone down.
Marcus used the word snobbery.
Yes.
And he said it on more than one occasion. Do you believe
Yes.
that there is a form of snobbery towards it?
Yes, for one simple reason. And I know we don't want to get into Clive too much, but I do think Clive and Clive's crusading attitude to try and root the corruption out of the game had rather a lot to do with it.
Okay, so more of a political thing than an actual just complete snub of it.
But because as well, let me say this, Clive, as well, do you remember the image of snooker in the olden days?
Yep.
What was the phrase that used to be used about snooker in the olden days?
Are you talking like back, in the 80s when I lived there and I was learning and enjoying the game?
Yeah, back in the 80s. What was the phrase that was used by some?
Well, I mean, they call it the golden era.
Yeah, no, but by those that didn't like it. What was the phrase that was used?
Please tell me. I'm not.
They called it signs of a misspent youth.
Oh yeah, yes, that's fair. Yes, that's true. I've heard that.
Yeah, because Yeah, because you know the story. I mean, Jimmy used to play truant from school to go down the snooker hall and play, and Alex wasn't exactly a moral role model.
No, that's true.
You know, so there was some truth in that characterization, but it's not the same now. It's different, and that snobbery therefore still persists.
Fair enough. Do you think that the media wants the game to die and move on and reside somewhere else?
I think, look, again, I don't see. I can't really answer that without going back to Clive because, right, Clive always wanted the game to be big.
Of course. Yep.
But those running the game, like before Barry Hearn came in,
Yep.
didn't want the game to be big. I remember Dave Hinton told a story on his podcast when him and Michael McMullen were discussing it. And they were talking about, how the game was run and, how badly it was run. There was actually a confrontation between, I think it was Clive and someone, and he said, Clive was given off that there was no like non-British sort of opportunities to go foreign, sort of in the 90s, to play professional tournaments outside of Britain. And you know what the person said?
Yep.
Sure, why would we want to play it outside Britain? It's a British game.
True, but I mean
that was the attitude. That was the sort of snobbish attitude that was going about at the time. It was a gentleman's club, and nobody was allowed in unless the bigwigs said so, if you like.
True.
So yes, I would say yes. The media, look. First of all, the media doesn't care because. Particularly now, the players are more moral and more upstanding now, and they're better role models, if you like, right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. Absolutely.
Whereas in the heyday, why was Alex Higgins on the front page a lot of the time?
For headbutting the tournament officials and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So good sport generates headlines if it's like a mainstream sport, but snooker's never been treated as a mainstream sport.
No.
It's been treated as a mainstream sport if somebody says something out of turn, but it's not treated as a mainstream sport for the game itself.
Actually, it's only treated as a mainstream sport when the World Championships is on. That's about it. Otherwise, it gets no airtime.
And even then, if Ronnie goes out early.
True, that's very true. People think, oh, this isn't going to be as interesting.
Whereas we know
for sure that there's many great players from all corners of the globe.
Like, I know you're a Ronnie fan. But I trust you do not subscribe to the idea that snooker will die without O'Sullivan.
No, absolutely not. The sport will go on without him. There's just as good names out there that can replace him. No one is beyond holding the game hostage like that. It's not Brian Sullivan.
No.
We got John Higgins. We got Judd Trump, who's coming up. I'm sure there'll be some other Asian players that'll be up there. Like, the game is not hinging on how he is. No way. The game's going to find another star.
So
my contention is the way that specifically the BBC, but I would argue media in general, it treats snooker like a second-class citizen.
Yeah, it does.
I don't like that. I find that very disheartening.
It is rather disheartening.
Because you think about it. We just put a podcast together, Graham, yourself, and I. Now, we love snooker, but there's not much to compete with. Okay, Dave Hendon's got his podcast, and there's a couple of other ones I've seen on Facebook.
Talking snooker with Phil Hagan.
Exactly, but I mean,
Nick Metcalf.
When you think it's a global sport, and there's only let's exaggerate and say there's 5 or 6 podcasts out there covering snooker.
Yeah.
it's like the game deserves a bit better treatment than it gets, as far as I'm
Yeah,
concerned. And it does. Most of it does stem from the BBC and the newspapers. The newspapers just put it in there, in the stats column, and that's it. And that's just wrong.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Look, by the way, let's make a distinction when we talk about the BBC. There are good people on like Hazel Irvine's brilliant, for instance.
absolutely. This isn't an attack on anyone in particular. I'm taking course with the platform that it's shown,
Yeah.
and that the way it's being treated.
Yeah,
Like, seriously, I don't know. Okay, let's move on to another subject, but this one I would argue is still related to the BBC. Yesterday we talked about commentators. Do you remember?
yeah.
We said, Marcus said about having two players in the booth as opposed to a journalist and a player.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the BBC's commentators, all they are is old, antiquated 70s or 80s players.
Yeah.
Like their product on air when they are on air is very bland.
Yeah.
I think snooker needs, at least from that position. I mean, I'm not a player, and I know you're not, and I know Graham's not, but it needs an injection of enthusiasm that has been lacking for at least a decade.
Yeah.
Because
let's compare it with Eurosport, because I think Eurosport are the gold standard now.
100% agree with you.
Who do Eurosport put in the commentary box?
Well, the obvious one is Joe Johnson and Dave Hendon, which is ex-player with a journalist, an elite level journalist.
Or Neil Foulds and Philip Studd.
Neil Foulds, Philip Studd. I've seen Phil Yates and Stephen Hendry. I find those guys very entertaining.
Yeah. In the olden days when Clive was in better health, of course, Clive and Alan McManus was very good.
Absolutely. So that point right there, and then you move. Let's move it back to the BBC again, and you've got. Well, I mean, let's use the Welsh Open as an example. You've got Rob Walker calling the final. Now, I get, circumstances due to COVID, and he's just a substitute. But does your product get so desperate that it's going to use just a ring announcer to call a final? A home nations final? Come on now.
No.
I would be embarrassed. No knock on Rob Walker, but you're putting him in a position to fail.
Yeah, and Rob Walker's a great MC.
Absolutely correct. That's what he is. You're right. He's a great MC, and some of the interviews he does, after the final with Jordan Brown and Ronnie when he was down there asking questions, I thought he was great.
Yeah.
But then you've got him calling a home nations final and a decide, and the match was great, and that's again, I blame the BBC. That's the quality that you're going to serve the people watching it. Surely I'm not the only one that's 10,000 miles away watching in Vancouver, the only one complaining about that. Surely not.
Of course you're not. Of course you're not.
So it just shows you that I wish BBC would just give it up entirely. If that's the way they want to treat it, give it up. Let Eurosport or ITV or another a new snooker platform. Get man, if I had it, I would have it on here all the time, and I'd have it in North America on Sportsnet, Sportsnet World or something like that. But they don't. It's the same thing. They just don't care. They just plug it in and get their money, and that's it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a rant on BBC.
Yes.
The other thing that I know we've kind of bounced around a little bit is the tournament schedule. Now, Dave Hendon said he was fine if they played 48 weeks out of the 52 and was comparable with golf and tennis.
Yeah.
I can see, but it seems very like a long season.
It does.
But Marcus proposed a full month off, like snooker free. He suggested August, which I guess in a way is a good time because family time with the kids on summer holidays and stuff.
Yeah.
So if I was in charge of snooker if I was in charge of snooker, I would go with what Marcus said.
I would take July and I would take the last week of July and the whole of August.
Yeah, that's fine. I would say the World Championships is the last tournament of the season.
Yeah.
Now, if you take off May and June or however you want to work it, but I think the World Championship should be the last tournament of the year of the season.
Yeah.
So if you,
well, it is, but like the World Championship this year, I think finishes on what, the 3rd of May, right?
yes,
I think they're back playing on like the 8th of June or something.
yeah, I think that just seems a little bit too soon.
And again,
especially when you're traveling around Europe and potentially back to China and all that again, and Saudi Arabia potentially.
yeah, well, again, you have to blame previous administrations.
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
Because they made it so there was 3 or 4 months between tournaments.
Yeah.
And therefore you couldn't earn a living. Therefore, when Barry Hearn came in, he said, let's have them playing every week, and now it's almost gone to the other extreme.
Right, exactly. And now I'm sure what you're saying and what I'm saying is we need to find that sweet spot between too much and too little. We don't want to go back to 6 tournaments a year. That's absurd. But we need to find that sweet spot where if you want to host the World Championships, then you've got to maybe give them a little bit more time away from the game. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think we should move the World Championship slot because I think that's traditional. It's been that way for so many years. So I don't think we should move it. But definitely take like from May until about
beginning of July.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe work it where you can get some time off with your family. Like put the smaller events at the front and progressively get the more meaningful events down the road.
Yeah,
like sorry, go ahead.
Because I do agree with Marcus. There is something nice about watching snooker in the winter time.
Yeah, he's right there, and I would argue the players like the idea of having the month of August off with their family and family and friends.
Yeah.
So it's a case of we've got to find a way to find that sweet spot.
Yeah. And look, as I keep saying, we're not going to change anything here and now.
Of course not. No, we just come here. We've created a platform to express some views.
Yeah, we've done that. And I do agree that there should be some balance found, but nonetheless, we'll have to wait and see what Barry Hearn comes up with.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm sure he'll come up with something. He's worked wonders before. I'm sure he can do it again. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So another topic that came up as well, and it was kind of off the head, was about the idea of having snooker on the radio.
Yeah, you were the one that raised that off air, and I was initially a bit hesitant, if you remember. But I did, now that Marcus has explained it, you know, I like the idea more than when you've mentioned it originally.
Well, I mean, let's face it, if you can get golf and tennis and motor racing, now I get they're different sports, and snooker's a little more visual than maybe those sports are. I still think that you could find a way to get snooker exposure via the radio.
Yes.
Like, I don't know. I in so many ways, I think snooker is an untapped gem.
Yes. But you see, in the United Kingdom, our main sport radio station Like, well, we have two main sports radio stations. Radio 5 Live, which is run by the BBC,
Mm-hmm.
and Talk Sport.
Okay.
And apparently, I was looking on Marcus's Facebook page, and apparently his snooker and darts slot is at 2:15 in the morning.
Yeah, but it's just a slap in the face again, right? Like,
Yeah.
snooker and darts don't mean anything, so we'll put it at 2:15 in the morning. Like, the game deserves better than that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
It deserves the credit and the respect it deserves. It doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, we are making our podcast to put some perspective in this, Scott. We are putting our podcast on in prime time in the UK time. Okay.
Sort of 6, 7-ish.
Yeah. We as a group, the 15 Red Podcast, give snooker the respect it deserves, the coverage it deserves, by putting it in a meaningful time slot. They find 2:15 in the morning when almost everyone's sleeping, and then they can justify it. Like you said, they're box tickers. That's all that is. That's box ticking, man.
Yeah.
That they're not. They're just. It is what it is. One of the reasons for myself I got into this, I wanted to expose the game to a level of where it gets the respect and people enjoy it.
Yeah, because like we all know, and we've sort of begun to tap into the snooker community, as you know, in the last month or so.
Yep.
But it is so small. Now, I don't want it to get so big that it becomes like football, but at the same time, it should grow a bit.
That's the thing. Snooker is completely the opposite of, say, football. It's never going to be like that. Snooker's never going to be like that. But you can't tell me that there's no reason why snooker shouldn't be up there with golf, tennis, horse racing,
even darts.
Like, if you were to rank just those events, snooker's still at the bottom of the list of that package.
Now, in terms of quality, I would say, in terms of which sport's better to watch, snooker's the best.
Well, without question, it is. But they just look at it just from like what gets more money, what gets more coverage. Like horse racing, obviously, can only be done at a certain time. So I just think that they don't do a good enough job calling the bosses at the BBC and do a better fucking job of getting.
Apologies for the bad language.
Nah, it slipped, but you know what I'm saying. They got to do a better job, because it says something when you, Graham, and I are doing a better job than these big guys at office that make decisions. We do a better job than they do.
But the thing I don't get with the BBC is, why is their presenter so good in Hazel Irvine, but yet their overall brand is very substandard?
Well, I mean, there's always going to be, if you take a whole lineup, there's always going to be good people in any lineup. There's always good and bad, but I'm not necessarily blaming like them. I'm taking the shot at the people that make the decisions, and not putting in, a fair shake to what snooker is.
But then again, let's at the same time try and be sort of even-handed, and the BBC would say we have a right to cater to those that don't like snooker. We know that, of course we know that, but at the same time, they do have an obligation to provide good content, and they're not doing it.
And that's it. And if they are unable to do that, or if their answer to me is, oh well, we have an obligation, then why don't you give up the property to another network then? Give the property up. The property is only as good as you show it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you show it at 2 a.m, it's not really much of a property to you.
Yeah.
So that
But
was into that.
yes.
So,
Anyway, that's a discussion for another day, I think.
yeah, no, I was actually really impressed with what Marcus had to say.
Yeah.
It was unfortunate that the sound was a little bit echoey, but that's fine. And I'm sure he wouldn't mind coming on again, and we can certainly kick what we said previously and other topics with him.
Yep.
So with that,
Shall I?
Sorry, I was just going to say we've got Cliff Thorburn coming on Wednesday.
Yes, and God willing, if I can arrange it,
Yep.
we've got Kelly Barker, Crucible snooker fan, or Crucible super fan, who's been there every year since 1998.
Oh, that is a super fan. When you think about that, that is something.
And of course, as I mentioned earlier, her partner, Chris Dowder, produces the almanac.
So yeah, so these guys, I mean, it's another perspective. We've covered we're covering players, we've covered media, now we're covering fan.
Yeah.
So it's another perspective, which should be very interesting.
And of course, it'll be good for you, Mike, because you've never been, whereas Graham and I have been.
Correct. Yeah, I'm hopefully well, if not this coming year, maybe next year. I would definitely like to venture over to catch a match or two.
Yes.
So,
wouldn't you love to do the full 17 days, though?
Oh boy, is there a way of getting 17 days?
Yes.
Can you buy a whole package? I don't know how it works when you buy the tickets.
Yes, I think they're trying to phase the season tickets out, but you can buy tickets for every session.
Oh, you can. Oh, okay. And that's how you do it. You buy each session.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Although there's one guy, John, who sits in the front row, and he's been going every year since 1981. But he says for a fortnight of the year, he takes paracetamol tablets for breakfast.
That's funny. Wow, since 1981. I mean, that's another. If we could get a hold of him, he'd be an interesting listen to as well.
Yeah.
But all right, so let's hit a couple trivia questions before we put a lid on this.
Indeed.
Okay, so you've got a couple for me tonight.
Yeah, well, they're easy. Don't worry, they're easy.
All right, let's hear it.
Right, John won his first in 1998.
Yep.
John Higgins. When did he win his third?
When did John Higgins win his third? Okay, I'm going to say 2011.
2009. 2011 was his fourth.
Okay, all right.
Surprised you didn't get that. And in 2004,
yeah.
Who did Ronnie defeat in the final?
Oh, jeez. Who did Ronnie?
I'll give you a clue. He would win it 2 years later.
He would win it 2 years later?
Yes.
Maybe.
He was a Scotsman.
Oh, I know. Graham Dott.
Correct.
Very good. That I think the last little hint helped me out there.
Yeah.
All right. Not too bad, I guess. 1 out of 2. Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else that you want to add to the episode before we call it a night?
That would appear to be it, but how exactly do I end it?
Basically, we'll sign off and you'll hit the phone button.
Ah, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right then. So we'll
good night, and I think, am I on my own tomorrow? Or are you there?
If I get back in time, I'll make a concerted effort to be here because I don't know. It's always good to have two people kind of yapping away at each other.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, man. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night.
Well done. Good night.
See you later. Thanks, guys.
Goodbye.